Okay, first of all, Chodesh Tov to Nilu and myself, because it's already nighttime by us. By you guys, it's not. It's Rosh Chodesh Adar, like we spoke about today at noon, at the noon class, the noon halacha class. And I won't say any halachas, but I will share some insight, some Hasidic insight, and a couple things that I find interesting about Adar. First of all, like we mentioned earlier, there's 60 days of Adar this year, 2 months of Adar, because we have to make a leap year. I don't know, what is it, 7 times every 19 years? And why? Because the lunar calendar, we follow the lunar and the solar, and we need certain holidays to fall out at certain times. So there's a bit of a lag if we just follow the lunar calendar, like why Ramadan is they follow solely the lunar calendar. So Ramadan sometimes is in the winter, sometimes in the summer. So we need Pesach to fall out, Passover to fall out in the spring. So we need to make sure that it's always around that time. Passover is a month later this year. So it's in the middle, towards the end of spring, which makes it a little bit worse in a way, because the Seder will start that much later at night. But we need to do that. So which month did they pick to add an extra month? Of course, they picked Adar, which is the most joyous month in the Jewish calendar. And maybe we'll explain why a little bit. The astrological sign, and you're probably asking, we believe in astrology and astrological signs and zodiac signs? Well, yes and no. But we certainly talk about it in the Talmud. So on a certain level, we do. It's part of our tradition. And the astrological sign is a fish. Pisces, is that what it is? Pisces is a fish. And what's unique about a fish? A fish is constantly conscious of the fact that it is only alive because of water. The moment it would be removed from water, it would cease to exist. And this means that it's constantly, consciously connected to its source, which sounds right, sounds familiar. So every month, every month has a mazel, has an different astrological influence, which we call a mazel. And the concept of this astrological influence gets a little complicated within Judaism. And like we actually had a class on it. Rabbi Schneer gave a Thursday night Talmud class, I don't know, maybe 3 months ago. Ein mazel b'Yisrael. The Gemara says a Jew has no mazel. There's no mazel within the Jewish people. So at the end of the conclusion of that, what did we come to? What was the conclusion of that? First of all, shlomazel. What's a shlomazel? Shaloi mazel, someone that has no mazel. The whole Yidden, all the Jews are shlomazlim. They have no mazel. But what it really means is that we're not dictated by, we're not under the control of any mazel, which we see by the month of Adar. But another way of understanding this line, Ein mazel b'Yisrael. There's no mazel. Ein mazel. There's no mazel b'Yisrael amongst the Jewish people. Ein can also be written as ayin, which means nothingness. So how do we translate that? That ayin, what's our mazel? The ayin, the nothingness. What is nothingness? Nothingness, ayin, is always referred to as Hashem. Creation is something from nothing. That's how it's yesh me'ayin. There's something from nothing. In our perspective, God is nothingness, because we can only see creation. We don't see God. But ayin, yesh ayin b'Yisrael. What's our mazel? Our mazel is the ayin, and we're always trying to stay connected to that. The vast majority of the universe receives its mazel from different spiritual lights, different spiritual energies, and we plug right into the nothingness, right into the source, right into Hashem, which is reflected by a fish. A fish is always constantly conscious and connected to its source, and that's one reason why. That is one reason why the month of Adar is a special month. we also see this reflected. What do we see this concept, this parallel of this concept? Why is Adar such a joyous month? Most holidays celebrate our like highest moments. Shavuos was the giving of the Torah. We spoke about it before. Passover is when we left Israel. The highs. We always celebrate the highs. The problem with highs, and my big beef with inspiration, is that it doesn't last. What's unique about Purim is that Purim really celebrates us at our lowest moment. We were completely assimilated. We were not interested in Torah, really. We're not interested in mitzvahs. We felt, the whole beginning of the story is we went to Achashverosh's party and we felt as equals. This always repeats itself. Yeah, we feel like we finally made it. We're finally accepted by the highest levels of society. And so then we start saying, we don't need God anymore. We sort of throw off the relationship. We throw off the yoke. Yeah, I've sort of outgrown you, so to speak, in a very unhealthy relationship. I'm better than you now. And that's usually what happens to us. And we end up becoming, we move into sinning, and God removes the special protection. And then we're like, put against the wall, and very deserving of any sort of punishment or consequence. But nevertheless, God does not respond that way. God will ultimately respond despite whatever happened, despite our relationship and whatever rift we have in our relationship, I will come and I will interfere, and it will stop any sort of, negativity, ultimate negativity. I will draw the line. You can't be pushing around my people for too long. And then I come in, and if you were the one that was pushing around my people, I'm going to end you and annihilate you. And which shows on this relationship, a true relationship that we have, that no matter what we whatever we do, we try to do to God, whatever we try to do to the relationship, harm the relationship, God always remains. The bond is essential. It doesn't matter. It's not about what we did or what we didn't do or what we said or what we didn't say. The bond is essential. And that was brought out in the times of Purim. We were the most undeserving of protection, and yet we ultimately received it. And that is the cause for great joy. It was that a bond is essential and it can never be broken. And it was really brought at that time. So, and obviously it permeates throughout the entire month. As we know, the 15th of the month, that's when Purim is, and that's when the moon shines the brightest. That's when the culmination of the entire month is present, is shining, is revealed. But we see that it's the culmination. So therefore, the energy is actually reflected in the entire month. It permeates the entire month. So we have 2 months of that. Mishenechnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. It says every single day we have to increase in joy. It's not like you just have joy, that's it. I'm gonna have one day I'll have joy and just ride on that joy. No, each day has to be increased. And the Rebbe would say, like I said before, since we have 60 days of Adar, if you guys saw my question today on Instagram, if a drop of milk falls into a meat stew, what's the halacha? Can you have the stew? Well, yes, you could, if there are 60 times the stew meat against the drop of milk. We say it becomes batel and shishim. The milk, or even if it was like bacon fat or bacon juice, it's the same thing. Mixing milk and meat and bacon are on the same level. One's not more unkosher than the other. If a piece of bacon oil falls into a kosher pot, but the kosher pot is 60 times greater than the amount of bacon oil, you can have the stew. It becomes batel, becomes nullified. And the Rebbe would also often say that we have 60 days of Adar, that all negativity, anything emotional negativity or any sort of negativity, depression, self-doubt, all these different things become batel in the month of Adar, because there's 60 times the amount of simcha. So there's a great advantage to be taken over here. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know. Move right into the Parsha. My father, I don't know if he's on, he always mentions to me, this Parsha. These Parshias, you get into like great details about, the building of the Beis HaMikdash, the building of the tabernacle, so which is true. It's like it deals with a lot of numbers. We were never very good at building things. My wife, she's the one that builds stuff. We buy stuff from IKEA. I just hand her the tools and she builds. Like, I can't deal with numbers and directions, and I can if I take it slow, but I have no patience for it. So I can imagine this parsha for me, until I learned Chassidus, was like agonizing. But there's the most famous line in perhaps all of Chassidus, is mentioned in this week's parsha. God says to Moshe, "Make for me a mikdash, a holy home, and I will dwell in them." Now, anybody who reads the Torah, anybody who's an English major, will be like, "This thing was written by an idiot," like grammatically incorrect. Make for me a home, and I will dwell in it. What does it mean? Make for me a home, and I will dwell in them. But the concept is, it was written on purpose. The concept is, God said, "I will dwell in each one of the Jewish people." If you make for me this home, not only will I dwell there in this home, but I will dwell in the hearts of all of the Jewish people. That's why the destruction of the temple wasn't just like this place that was destroyed, or even, this beautiful castle, let's say, that was destroyed. Like, oh, this is our pride and joy. No, a part of us was taken away. The divinity lived in us. As long as there was a home for God in this world, it was able to be penetrated into ourselves. God was able to live within us, no matter where we were in the world. It's a phenomenal concept that I don't fully understand and fully grasp, but nevertheless, it's true. So when the tabernacle was destroyed, or the tabernacle was never destroyed, but when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the first one and the second one, we all went into an exile. There was a certain exile. God himself went into an exile. Classic question that I bring up all the time. If God is everywhere, then what's so special about Jerusalem? What's so special about the tabernacle or the Beis HaMikdash? So making for me this Mikdash refers to the tabernacle, the Mishkan, as we call it, that traveled around with the Jewish people for 40 years. And then when they entered in the land of Israel, it went to Shiloh. It went to a few different places for about 400 years. It traveled until King David moved it to Jerusalem as a permanent place. But for 400 years, we had this traveling, this caravan, this portable Beis HaMikdash. Why is that any more special? God is everywhere. So, as you all know, and I've mentioned many times, when I talk to you, I just love this mushal. I love this parable. When I talk to you, I look at your eyes, or I talk to your face, or in this case, I talk to your name, your black screen. No, but when I talk to you face to face, I look in your eyes and I talk to your face. But why not talk to your foot or elbow or your knee? Is your knee or your elbow or your foot less you than your face? No, it's all part of you. It's the same you. But what is it about your eyes specifically? Your soul is most revealed in your eyes, and it's most revealed in your face. And there's something holy. Holiness means transparency. When we say something is holy, or kedusha in Hebrew, it means transparency. That's a very good definition of what holiness is. So the fact that your face is transparent, where do I see your soul? Where is it most transparent? Is in your face. So that shows that there's more. It's closer to your soul than any other part of your body. And the same thing with the Holy Temple. Same thing with Jerusalem. There's a certain transparency there. There's transparencies not only in time and place, but there's also transparency in time. That's why we have holidays, because as we know, time works. It's not linear. It works in a spiral. I apologize. This background filter is making me look weird. I don't know. I think. Hold on a second. Choose virtual background. None. Okay. It's just bothering me. Sorry. Time is a spiral, which means we reconnect with a certain time. Although we're moving away in time from the event, but the energy, we revisit that energy. It's like a circle. We revisit that energy every year. And so that the fact that something special or a miracle happens in time shows a certain transparency There's a certain holiness in that time. That's why the Kohen Gadol can only go, he would go into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. Why Yom Kippur? On any other day? Because there's a transparency there. God is more revealed. The veil is removed, so to speak, during the times of Yom Kippur and many other holidays. And there's different degrees. They're varying degrees in holiness. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh. There's a certain holiness tonight and tomorrow, but it's not as holy. It's on the same level as Shabbos or on Yom Kippur or on Rosh Hashanah, where we have to refrain from doing certain mundane. The holiness is so revealed. There's no place for you to act so mundane. To be on your phone and to use electricity. It's to be much more absorbed in the holiness. So it also works in space. It also works in time. Let's move on over here. So make for me a holy temple, and God is now going to give us the instructions and what we have to do and what we have to give, what we have to pay for. Nothing's free. There's a doctor over here. He's originally from Morocco. He goes, nothing is free, my friend. Not even the air you breathe. I always remember that. So we also had to pay for things back then. So God opens up and he says, Vayichu li Terumah. Take for me, give to me Terumah. I'm sure you've ever heard of that term. Terumah. Terumah means a donation. But what's weird is it should have just said Vayitain li. Vayitain li. Give me Terumah. Give me a donation. Give me some of your money, your oil. We'll see they gave donations, oil, silver, gold, copper. It should have said, give me. Again, another grammatical weird, something wrong. It says, take me, vayichuli, take me, Terumah. I don't know, what does that mean? Take me donations. Give you donations. So the commentaries say, you should give for me, you should give it to me. It's trying to lead for you to say, you should take everything in this world belongs to me, and I've given it to you, and now give it back to me. You're taking me, so to speak. I'm giving of you. Basically, God says all that God is really doing is taking from one pocket and putting to the other, but he's giving it away for a moment to see, for you to have an ability and to have a chance to give something of yourself to me. But you should know, at the end of the day, everything really comes from me. It's kind of it's an interesting concept. But why is it? Another interesting thing is, it says, V'yichuli, you should take from me. And the commentaries say, Lishmi, for my sake. You should do this, not because you're going to get any reward. You shouldn't donate. This relationship shouldn't be based on any reward that you're going to give. You should do this, you should give it to me just because this is the right thing to do. Lishmi, which means lishma, for the sake of God. You should just do it for me, for the sake of God. And there's a machloikis, there's a disagreement in the Torah. Do mitzvahs need to be done for the right reasons, or with any reason at all? For example, if I put on tefillin, or a better example is, I find a guy on the street. It's happened to hundreds of times. Thank God for me. A guy on the street, I stop and I ask him, are you Jewish? And he says, yes. And I said, would you like to put on tefillin? And they'll be like, no, I don't really want to put on tefillin. And I'll be like, but he'll say, you know what? I have someone that's not well in my family. Will this help them in any way? And I'll say, yeah, it does. If it really, it does. Like, okay, fine. For that, I'll do it. And he puts on tefillin. But why is he putting on tefillin? He's putting on tefillin because he wants to help somebody physically, help them with their health. Or let's say you pay somebody. Yeah, teenagers. I want some teenagers to put on tefillin. This happened. It's happened. Trust me. $10. You call them on Sundays to put on tefillin, you get $10. Is that a problem? You have a question? Sorry. Is that a problem? So it's a machloikis. It's a disagreement. Some say yes, some say no in the sages. But the bottom line is, no, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Shebetech loy lishma, bal lishma, says the Torah. The bottom line is, through doing something for the wrong reason, you will, if you do a mitzvah for the wrong reason, you will, says the Talmud, you will ultimately come to do it for the right reason. We see this by children all the time. Children are not interested in learning Torah or doing mitzvahs. Even personally, there's plenty of time throughout the day I'm like, I do not need to daven mincha right now. I'm not, in the mindset. I'm not interested, but I'm running out of time. So I do it. Why do I do it? I do it sometimes because I did it from yesterday. I did it yesterday. I'll do it again today. Whatever. It's like once you're used to a certain status, like I can't lower myself, at the moment. Thank God it's not like that for me all the time. But it's just the reality. I'm not a tzaddik. But nevertheless, that we see by children, we entice them. We give them candy when a child goes to school for the very first time. I know, like my daughters, when they went to school, they throw candy at them and they put honey on the letters and they have the child lick the letters. They actually didn't do that for my kids, but that's like a very common thing. They lick the letters that the Torah is sweet. The letters of Torah are sweet, and you lick it, and the child just wants more because he wants more candy. So he'll learn more Torah so he gets more candy. That's perfectly okay. In fact, that's encouraged. But you should know that's not we don't do it for you don't do it for candy. We don't do it because you're going to become this great person. We don't do it because we're going to go to heaven. We're not into that. We don't care about that. We're trying to be a little bit more mature about it. And we're doing it because we want the relationship. We're doing this because this is the right thing to do. We just want to do the right thing. And you might say, well, the right thing feels good. It does feel good. And hopefully at a certain point, you just do it because you want to do it. I'm speaking to myself. Did you have a question, Noah?
Well, I was just relating that to sometimes like you get in the habit of putting on tefillin, and sometimes you feel disconnected or it's just like really don't want to do it. But then, like you said, you don't want to reduce yourself, right? I mean, if you start by reading the Shema and then you go into the Amida, say you just put it on without saying those prayers, right? That's like a reduction. But you should still put it on, right?
It's not actually a reduction in tefillin, without getting too technical. Tefillin and prayer are two different things. We just do it at the same time. But it's maybe a reduction in prayer, so to speak. Yeah, you just didn't say it. You didn't say that prayer that day.
So it's like, I don't know. It's like what level you reduce yourself to.
Yeah, right. But it's any relationship. It's like this is whole thing. You have your ups and downs. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it. That's the difference between, great players and mediocre players and, football players or whatever it is. There's consistency that I do it even when I don't want to do. I still do it even when I don't want to do it. I'm not saying I'm holding there. I mean, I do pray every single day and I say everything I'm supposed to say, but it wasn't like that, wasn't always that easy. But yeah, it's like any healthy relationship, and that's fine. And it's because like we said earlier, the bond is unbreakable. And the ups and downs are good. The texture, it's good for the relationship. I mean, you don't want a rocky relationship, but to make it real, it makes it more real. And there's a lot of chassidus behind it, and perhaps we'll speak more about it. Certainly in Tanya, we're going to speak more about it. But I just want to tell you a quick little story. There's a story of the Ruzhiner, Rabbi Yisrael of Ruzhin. So he was a big Rebbe, and he would have people come and ask him for blessings. Now, when you go and you go to, like, even when we went to our Rebbe, you bring a kvittel, which is a letter. And you don't speak your problems. You write them down, and the Rebbe would read it. And when you would read it, back then, our Rebbe didn't do that. Didn't do this part. They would give tzedakah. Now, you could give tzedakah to the Rebbe. It's called Maimid. And the Rebbe, it was for the upkeep of the Rebbe's house and for his his programs and his whatever he wanted to use the money for. But back then they would have the money. Yeah, they would give like, say 100 rubles and my kvittel and my letter, and he would give you a blessing or guidance, clarity on something. And it says that the money would come in, and he had 3 boxes. One of the boxes was the Ruzhiner. One box was for his house, I believe. One box was for maybe like Torah study, and the other box was for horses. And he was able to see in the money, was it given in vain, or was it given for the right reasons? In other words, am I only giving money to the Ruzhiner because I just want him to give me like clarity on something? Like I got to pay to play, so to speak. So with that money, if he could see in that money, it had like a residue left over, he put it in a box for horses. to take care of his horse, like food for the horses. But the money that was given not because I wanted anything of it, but I'm giving because this is the right thing to do. It doesn't have a salary or whatever it is. I'm giving money. I'm giving tzedakah. Now the money part of that money also went to pay for like the needs of people in his community. So I'm giving tzedakah because I want to give tzedakah. I want to help my community. I want to do it because there's a mitzvah to do it. Or am I doing it because I want some sort of recognition? So the ones that would do it for some sort of recognition, that money would be used for the horses, and all the other money would go to more loftier causes. Like a cute little story. So going into the donations, what happens in this week's parsha? We have all these donations. We have gold, bronze, silver. Everyone gave according to what they could afford. So some people gave a lot of gold. Some people gave whatever, a shtick gold, a little piece of gold. But there was one thing that everyone had to give the equal amount for. And that was a half a piece of silver. And it was used, that money was used to purchase something very interesting. The sockets for the bottom of the tabernacle. What happened is you had wood called acacia wood, atzei shittim. You had the wood panels, and they had to be very practically. They had to be like anchored into the ground, and they have this place like these what they're called adanim, these sockets that they would be placed into, and it would hold the wall up. So everybody had to give money for that, and it wasn't so much money. The dimensions of it ended up being a lot. The dimensions of the tabernacle were about 54 feet by 17 foot long, so it's pretty big. And the question is, why do we all have to give the same? So, Kabbalistically speaking, we all come from different levels within God. We know there are seven character traits within God. There's kindness. There's places that are more of Gevurah, which is like more severity, strength. Tiferes, which is truth, harmony. Then we have Netzach, which is like commitment, the ability to commit. Hod, splendor, like beautiful, the beautiful mitzvahs. What we all come from different places. We all come from, what does it mean? I'm sorry. Let me explain something. We all come from one source, one basic source. But as our souls descend into this world, it becomes more concrete and becomes more schmutzig. We pick up more of the material world, and our souls maybe pick up more in a certain area as it descends into the world, and then not pick up so much in another area. And those areas where it didn't get so concrete, didn't get so materialist, didn't get so physically stuck, that's usually where our talents are. Yeah, we see people are very kind because whatever, that's where they come from. It's not that they come from that world. They remained a little bit more pure, more lofty in that area. That part of them didn't get covered up so much. And we see some people are much more into strength and Gevurah. We see some people are much more into, they're more humble and they're naturally like this. We all have different talents. And in those areas that we have more talents in, we're supposed to use them out. It was done by design. Nevertheless, it shouldn't mean that you shouldn't work on your other areas. But there's one thing you have to know. We all came from one source. We actually have, there's something called an epigenetics. I'm sure some of you, we have some doctors on. Epigenetics. So if a person goes through some sort of trauma, there's like a theory. I don't know if it's theory, maybe it's reality, but I find it to be fascinating. Epigenetics. A person goes through some sort of trauma, and certain parts of the brain or parts of the cell or cellular structure or in the nervous system, they get shut down. They get turned off, so to speak. We all have natural traits, and then when a person goes through sort of trauma, parts of it get turned off. Parts of our body or cellular structure or emotional structure gets turned off. But according to epigenetics, it doesn't actually change the structure of the cell. What it does is it just shuts off the light. And another light gets turned on, but that other area, that light doesn't get turned off, which means you're actually always remain whole and perfect and complete, but just certain areas get shut off through the trauma. The soul's descent into this world is called a trauma. It's a trauma That's exactly what they call. That's exactly what they call. We have many nigunim. You can't even describe it, so we have to make melodies to describe the descent of the soul into the physical world. And that's why when the baby comes out, it's crying. That's one of the Kabbalistic reasons. It's crying because the emotion is so overwhelming. It just came from basking in the rays of whatever, and now it's in this very concrete world. But what's unique about it is that it never actually gets turned off. So everything is still there. Everything remains, and you can actually turn on those places if you are trained right and you're focused and you're determined to turn on those other areas of your cellular structure. So the same thing. We have all these character traits. Yeah. The bottom line is you still remain perfectly whole. Nothing was taken away from you. Just certain areas got covered over. So, and to bring out that point, every Jew was required to give a donation that represented the equalizer, the part where we all came from the same place. And that the foundation of everything, we all come from the same place. And that's why everybody had to give the same amount for the foundation of the tabernacle, the foundation of the structure. The tabernacle is a human body in a microcosm. It's God in a microcosm. We know that B'Tselem Elokim Nasa Adam, we're made in the image of God. And same thing with the holy temple. It's made in the image of God. So again, it's the representation of the foundation of where we come from. We all come from the same source, come from the same place. So it's called the Adonim. Moving on. That, interestingly enough, this is like a little bit Kabbalistic to an even greater degree. When the prophets would prophesize, everything was in the vision of a man. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, I know what a man looks like, but it's not clear what, obviously what they saw. They couldn't describe it in great detail. They could not do that. But it's always in the image of man, because again, to bring out this point that God comes in an image of a man, so to speak. And that's how he relates to the human being. That's how he relates to us in the image of man. So messages were sent via man, meaning the supernal man, which is God. Whatever. I don't fully understand it, so I don't want to get too much into it. But just okay, you can have that there. We have the Holy Ark. Those of you who have seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, not everything in that movie is true, but if you didn't know that already. But one thing they did point out over there is that they didn't, if in the movie, they didn't dig underneath the temple. They dug like away from the temple in like a weird place. And that's because, well, I don't know if you catch it in the movie, the ark was stored. The ark was not in the Holy of Holies, was not in the second temple period. It wasn't in the Holy of Holies in the second temple period. King Solomon, when he built the temple, right? King David, his father, drew up the plans, but God said, you can't build it, your son will build it. So who was that? Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech. He built it, and when he built it, he saw with prophecy that the temple would be destroyed. So he built tunnels, mazes, deep underneath, very deep below the Holy Temple, so that when the time came for the destruction, the ark would be placed there and it wouldn't be taken away. Which means that there are two places the ark can be stored. And they have two proper places for the ark to be stored. One is in the Holy of Holies, which is what we always think, and deep below, in the mazes. So when they were digging for it, they were digging in those deep mazes. At the end of the destruction of the first temple, King Yeshayahu saw that the temple was going to be destroyed, and he moved it down there. So therefore, during the entire second period temple, the ark was never seen, but it was in its proper place, and it's still there to this day. So a part of the Beis HaMikdash was never destroyed. And it's representative of what's called the luz bone, which is like a speck inside somewhere in the brain, which can never be destroyed. And that's the place from which revival of the dead will come through. The soul will re-enter the body through the luz bone. All these bodies that have decomposed, so to speak, there's a part of the body that has never decomposed. It's called the loose bone, and that from that place, God will regenerate the body. It's called the loose bone, and that's representative of the Holy of Holies, the Ark, which will never be destroyed. It was never moved from its place. Now, something about the Ark, a lot of interesting things. The Ark is not, it's not a whole number, which was the dimensions of the Ark are not whole. It's 1.5 by 2.5 by 1.5. Why does it should have been 1 by 2 by 1? No, that makes more sense. But the Sfas Emes, I believe, or the first Ger Rebbe explains that in order for you to be whole, in order for you to experience holiness, you have to experience brokenness, which is a classic Hasidic concept. It's a classic Jewish concept that you'll find that when you're a little bit when you're broken down, the more broken down you are, the more spiritually sensitive you become. It's specifically through the broken pieces. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. That's what the Kotzker Rebbe would say. And the holy, it's not the imperfection, that specifically through the imperfection can God rest within you. You have to be broken in a certain way. So somebody had a question, I'm sorry. You can just ask. Okay, well, I'll read your question in a second, I'm sorry. Moving on into a little bit, we won't get too much into it, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff in the Holy Temple. Yeah, okay. The walls of the Holy Temple, they're called the walls. The acacia wood are called. No, I just blanked on myself. No, anybody know? Or still the Atze Shittim, called Atze Shittim, whatever, acacia wood. But the word Shittim means shtus, which means folly. It says a person doesn't sin unless a spirit of folly, shtus, enters him. Because a person in the right mind would not do the wrong thing. They don't want to sin. They don't want to hurt somebody else. But there's some sort of, they get a little confused. There's like this shtus that gets into them. It becomes illogical. Torah describes that a person who's sin is acting illogical. They might think they're acting logical. They might convince you, and they might spend their whole life trying to, legitimize it or make it logical, but they're acting illogical. But the thing is, acting illogical can be holy. There's a holiness to acting illogical called shtus. Everything in this world can be used out for holiness. There's a proper reason. There's good in it. You might say even anger or jealousy, and Chassidus does talk about that. When is it holy? But one of the things it does talk about clearly, which comes up very often, I should say, is folly, shtus, acting illogical. And we saw this by great sages would go to weddings in front of a chassan and a kala, a bride and a groom, and these were the ultimate, these were leaders of the Jewish people, Torah giants, prophets, clairvoyancy, the ultimate, and they would juggle fire. They would dance on their head. They would do very funny acts. They would gesture. And it's called shtus l'kedusha. That's called taking folly and using it out for holy purposes. And it brought tremendous joy and pleasure. We talk about it, tremendous joy and pleasure in Shemayim, that it was on that merit that they would enter the deepest and most sublime levels of godliness and spirituality, not because of their Torah study, but because of their ability to make light and use out, certain things which for holiness that other people weren't able to really tap into and use out properly. It's called shtus l'kedusha. It's represented by these woods, shtusim. It's the ability to take something physical, something that seems to be the opposite of godliness, and using it out for a holy purpose. That is ultimately what the whole Mishkan is about. That is ultimately what we're here to do, to take that which is, to materialize the spiritual and to spiritualize the material. That's ultimately our goal. That's shtus l'kedusha. That is represented by the wooden walls, which were called shtus. We get into, we'll just talk about, let's see what time it is, a couple more minutes. We have, if you walk inside, so whenever you see a picture of the Beis HaMikdash or the Holy Temple, there's this dome, there's like this structure. It's called the Heichal, which means literally a hall. It's the Heichal. Inside the Heichal, you found the Menorah, the Lechem HaPanim, which were 12 breads, and you found a golden altar for incense. And then and then there would be this partition, in the first Beis Hamikdash, the first temple, it was a wall. In the second temple, it was a curtain. And what was behind that curtain? The Holy of Holies, which there was another incense offering, and that's where the Ark would be, in the first temple and in the tabernacle. Inside the Ark, you had, what did you have there? No, not ghosts or demons like in the movie. You had the tablets, the first set of tablets that were broken, the second set of tablets, the manna, or we call it mun, and Aaron's staff was inside that in the Ark. The Ark was actually made of 3 compartments, made out of wood. It was made out of wood and then plated gold plate. It had gold plate over it. And then the most bizarre part of it, there was an image of 2 baby angels. Now, we are not allowed to make an image, a graven image of anything. And here we have in the Holy of Holies, the holiest place, we have an image of a child, 2 children. In fact, you find all over the Holy Temple and all over the tabernacle, fires being started, breaking Shabbos left and right, so to speak. The Kohen Gadol's garments, the high priest's garments, were made out of shatnez, which is wool and linen, which we're not allowed to wear, but he had it. These things are, the ability to make a graven image, so to speak, and break, and the Shabbos, the overriding Shabbos and wearing of shatnez. The Holy Temple was above creation, and we see there were 10 miracles that happened in the Holy Temple. It showed that it was above time and space, so it was above these, these limiting factors that we can't do. We can't make sacrifices. We can't make outside of the temple. We can't wear shatnez. We can't, on Shabbos, we're not allowed to light a fire, and we're not allowed to make a graven image. But the Holy Temple was beyond that. It says that when the Jewish people were close to God, when the relationship was close, those 2 angels, those 2 babies would be hugging one another. And when the relationship was bad, they would be facing the opposite direction. They would see that because they would go, I think you could actually peek through. Like, I think you were able to peek. Like, it's not like you weren't allowed to look inside the Beis Hamikdash in the Holy of Holies. You just couldn't enter it. So I think they could see. Plus, the Kohen Gadol would go there on Yom Kippur, and he would see how good the relationship was. Just a little interesting factoid. When was the last time we saw the 2 angels hugging one another, the 2 babies on top of the Ark hugging one another? During the destruction of the temple, destruction of the first temple, when we were sinning like crazy and yada yada, and we were being destroyed. We were being killed, and it was a very bad situation. They were hugging, and the point being made is that you think God has abandoned us during the time of destruction and when we're being annihilated, almost, so to speak. But actually, that's when God is the closest, and we have to be able to see it. It's a very hard concept to really internalize and understand, but nevertheless, it's the truth. Inside the Heichal, before we get into the Holy of Holies, you had something called the Lechem Apanim, the bread, the showbreads, which were baked on Shabbos, and they were switched out every week. It would stay fresh for the entire week. And it said, if you wanted it to smell fresh and seem fresh, it was fresh. But if you didn't, it wouldn't. And it said that the bread represented, it was the channel through which God gave us blessings for parnasa, wealth, and food and sustenance. And the lesson being, why was it called? Why that? The lesson being that if you want to see the hand of God in your life, you can, and you will. But if you don't want to, then you won't. The bottom line. And so that was represented by the 12, the showbreads. Something that Moses had a very tough time with was the menorah. The menorah was like Michelangelo. Yeah, the sculpture Michelangelo. No, sorry, not the sculpture. Michelangelo's King David. Yeah, David, the one where he's like naked. You know that one? What's so unique about that one? I don't know. I'm not like a big.
They're all naked.
Oh, they're all naked. Well, the famous one. Whatever. David, isn't that what it is? Is that what I'm talking about? God, speak up.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. So what makes that so amazing is that it was carved out of one piece of marble, right? I guess that's what's so amazing about it. I mean, oh my gosh, I just turned off my computer. Can you guys see me?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything just went dark because I just did something. What's so unique about it? That it was all carved out of one thing. The menorah was also carved out of one entire piece. Moses found it to be extremely difficult. In fact, he was so frustrated with it. God said, just throw the piece of gold. It's 100% gold. Just throw it in the fire and I'll take care of it, which is exactly what happened. The menorah was made out of 7 branches, not 8 branches, like the menorah we have. So why do we have an 8-branch menorah? Well, because there's 8 nights of Hanukkah. No. Yes, that is true. But the menorah that we have nowadays, there was another menorah in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, of the Holy Temple. And that one was so bright, it shined up the entire Jerusalem. And that's the one that we use. It was an 8-branch menorah. And we replicate that one because there's a miracle of Hanukkah. Not to get much into Hanukkah, we're past Hanukkah, so to speak. No, we're still living with Hanukkah. We take Hanukkah with us throughout the entire year. The Persumi Nisa, the main thing for us to do on Hanukkah is to publicize the miracle. And which menorah really publicized Judaism and Yiddishkeit, and that we're a light unto the nations, the menorah in the courtyard. So we use that, specifically that menorah, that 8-branch menorah. But the one that Moses made and the one that was inside the Holy of Holies, not the Holy of Holies, the one that was inside the Heichal was a 7-branch menorah.
Why was it 7?
Why was it 7?
It was written in the Torah as a instruction how to make it actually.
Yeah, 7 represents the 7 attributes. Each branch represents the 7 types of Jews that we spoke about earlier. It's a very good question. Yeah, Chesed, there's the Jews that are more like Chesed Jews, Gevurah Jews, Netzach Jews. So it represents the 7 kinds of Jews. It lights up our neshamas. It lights up our souls. So the Kohen Gadol, Kohen would light them up. And again, it would light up our souls as well. So there were 7. 8 is a number that is beyond the space and time. 8 is a number which is it's a very holy number. There's 7 days of the week. There's 7 types of Jews, 7-year cycles. All these 7 is represented by like limitation, creation. 8 is beyond creation. And so sometimes we got to tap into the 8. When Mashiach comes, there's going to be an 8th note. King David will have an 8th string on his harp, showing that that we're beyond nature. Just something very interesting about the menorah, just like a little Hasidic concept, maybe we'll end it here, that oil was used with olive oil. When can olive oil be lit? I mean, how can an olive be lit? Specifically when it's crushed. When it's crushed, then the oil comes out and then it becomes something that can be used for light. But specifically in a time of when we feel crushed, a time of oppression, suppression, that's when our greatest oil comes out. That's when our greatest light comes out, and it can be used to shine and be shining bright for the rest of the world. Let me actually end with one last thing, because this is actually fantastic. The boards in the temple and the tabernacle, there were 3 poles that went through them to connect them, to make them stand up. There were 3 poles, so they would connect to one another. And there was a pole on the top, pole below, and a pole in the middle. It says that the top pole was represented by Abraham, Avram. The bottom pole was Yitzchak. And the middle one, Yaakov. So when Avram, Yaakov, and Yitzchak, which is out of order, so to speak, it's out of order. There was a miracle with the middle pole. It was a miracle to it. All the other poles would just connect one pole to the next, but the middle one went all the way around. It was able to bend itself all the way around, which is a miracle. It was a piece of metal. How did it bend itself? And it was a miracle. The middle represents truth, and Yaakov represents truth. And what's unique about truth is that truth always seeks truth. It's the middle path. It always seeks truth through anything, any sort of situation that comes comes its way. It finds the truth in it, and it's able to bend. It's able to bend because it goes with the flow, man. If this is where the truth is, that's where I'm going. A Jew is a searcher. A Jew is one of the things that the Talmud calls us is that we seek truth. We search truth. We're always on a journey of truth, trying to find the truth in everything. And we get into different situations and different cultures, and we get into different experiences. Yeah, we're always like leading the way or getting into whatever it is, whatever is like the next thing going on. There's always like a Jew in there. Like, is the truth in here? That's represented. That is a Jewish trait, and we always try to find it. We try not to live there. We want to get to the bottom line. We want to get to the ultimate truth, obviously, which is Torah, which is hard to always see, and because that's what Galus is. Galus, exile, is the covering over of the truth. But nevertheless, we never stop searching. That's why a Jew will never feel satisfied in this world. It can't feel satisfaction in this world because it's always searching for truth. The soul is always searching for the truth and the ultimate truth, the absolute truth. So there can never be any satisfaction. So if you never feel satisfied, if you never feel comfortable, 100% comfortable, that's because that's who you are. Okay, so that's the guy. I'm sorry, you had a question. Wait, Noah, do you want to just say your question? I have to look over on this screen.
Sure. Is God instrumental in the process of self-discovery, or is it man's free will in the context, or is it both? Because you were saying that you were saying something about us knowing who we are, and God wanting us to express ourselves of who we are, but I think it's a matter of being honest with yourself. And the process of self-discovery is God implemental in placing us in a certain point of time, the timing of it, of when you learn things about yourself.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's true. Exactly true. That's exactly right. And just to add something very interesting. In the last week's parsha, so your question is, okay, so now I discovered the truth, but I'm already 50 years old or whatever it is. What about all those other times? Did I live a life of lying, whatever? So the last week's parsha, it says, Mispar Yemecha Amali. I will fill in the years of your life. And one of the explanations of that is we go through periods of like back and forth, or let's say I finally figure out the truth. I finally get to where I'm supposed to be. What about all those other years of my life? Were they a complete waste? No, it says God, Mispar Yemecha Amali. I will fill in those periods. I will fill in that time for you. That's not lost time. I'll fill it in for you. And not only that, Chassidus also takes it to a little bit of a different step. They were all steps and part of the process. Does the journey begin when you're on the road? Let's say you're trying to get to a destination. Does the journey begin once you're on the road to the destination? Or what about when you're packing your suitcase? Or what about when you planned the trip 3 weeks ago? Like you booked the tickets. Is that not part of the process? Says Chassidus, that is part of the process. That everything you've done in preparation for that journey is a preparation for the journey. It's all part of the journey. That's what took you. Sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to get to that journey and shorter, but that's up to God. However long he decides for you until he invents the airplane versus all the people that took a boat. It's not, some things are just beyond your control, but it's all part of the journey, and your whole life is part of the journey to the ultimate destination. And everything that's happened to you along the way was done on purpose. It's all part of the journey. They're just steps in your journey to the ultimate destination. It's Mispar Yemecha Mali. I will fill in those years. Don't think those are wasted years. It's Mispar Yemecha Mali. I will fill them in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Okay, guys. That's pretty good. This parsha could go on for like years, but I have to stop. Okay, thank you all very, very much, as always. And I will tomorrow. Yeah, sure. Tomorrow's Tanya, right? And the other stuff. You have any questions? Obviously, just text me. Okay. Be well, everybody.
Tanya, Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. Be well, everybody. Sei gesund.
Thank you.